sometimes you listen to an artist's album and maybe it's a 15-track album, and when you're playing it, you get to around track 7 and you're like, you know what? This album is good. It's actually quite good. It's not great as yet, but it's actually quite good. And if the next 3 tracks were average and the album was ending at around track 10, you'd be like, you know what? I'm still loving this album. It's still quite good. This is something I'm seeing here with Ford. Because when it comes to the XLT, I feel like even if they were to cut it here and say, I'm giving you a bakkie, you're probably going to look at it and be like, you know what, Ford has done a great job. You get a sense that they're not done, but for what you get, it's actually quite a good lineup, especially coming from bass to XL and to XLT before you even get to Wildtrak and the rest. Because XLT is probably the perfect mix between lifestyle and commercial. Whether you do one or the other, it doesn't necessarily feel like, oh, you know what, this is too agricultural for lifestyle purposes, or this is too nice or soft, should I say, for commercial purposes. And for this particular one that we're in right now, it's definitely that kind of a car. And I'm going to explain why I'm feeling like this right now. But we need to do things the right way. Welcome to the channel. It's We're Behind the Camera, and I appreciate that you're here with me today. So XLT. XLT is like a line where it fits in, where it separates between commercial and lifestyle. And it is a mix of the two, because when I'm looking at the base spec with the steel wheels, the black bumpers and so on, you can see that, you know what, if a person bought that, they're probably going to be using it more for commercial purposes. XL as well, as much as it has like body colored bumpers and so on, it still has some element of that in terms of the choice of plastics that they used on the body outside. You can easily just see that, you know what, it's still a little bit more commercial. You jump into the XLT, that's where even if someone is not necessarily mainly using it for that, you can see that, you know what, probably they chose the spec level because it is just all you need in a bakkie, basically. Whether you're going to use it for that or for that, it doesn't really matter much. Because if I'm looking at the Wildtrak side, together with the Raptor going up and so on, it's just, you know what, even if a person never does anything commercial, you're not bothered about that, because literally those things can be a choice between that and the SUV. And if you look at the pricing as well, it's also telling this story that I'm explaining right now. The base starts at around 510,000. The XL starts at around 494,000. This particular one, the XLT, starts at around 632,000. Then you jump almost 300,000 to get to the Wildtrak at around 925,000. So you can literally see that things are changing, because when you get to the Raptor, you're already above 1 million. I wanted to show you this car before it gets dirty, because from here on it's dust all the way and you're not going to see it clean anymore. Otherwise, it does have driving modes which incorporate normal, eco, towing and slippery. We're going to put it on slippery, and then we're going to put it on 4H, because now we need all 4 wheels to grip and not slip in anyway, because the gravel is slippery. Now we are taking on the gravel road, and we'll be talking more about the XLT. And as usual, you know, our conversation is not based on this particular drive only, but we're basing it on the experience of the car as a whole, what we experienced and what we enjoyed, what we did not enjoy with the car. Yeah, so that's just going to be the same with this one as well. That sound, I heard it a few times. I don't know if it's the sports bar or it's the tailgate, because sometimes when you're hitting like a hard bump and so on, it does actually come on at the tail end. So I'm not sure exactly if it's specific to this unit or it's how this is put together, but it doesn't give you that feeling that it's not tight, but that sound does happen now and then. Anyway, as you know, with the Rangers, you still have specs within specs, and within the XLT spec variant, there's still 4 variants to choose from. There's single tables and there's by tables. 4x2, 4x4 single table, 4x2 by table, and then 4x4 by table, which is the one we are in right now. And the prices, of course, they do show you that you are moving up within the specs, because the single table ones are 2 liters paired with the 6-speed auto, 125 kilowatts, 405 newton meters of torque. And then when you come here again, it's a 2 liter by table, of course I've already said that, 10-speed auto, and then you get 154 kilowatts and 500 newton meters of torque. I feel like they took the previous Wildtrak and they put it in here in this new body, and that's a good thing. So I said this starts at around 632,000 rands, right? In the XLT variants. I didn't say it ends there, because to get this one in this particular spec, you're gonna get it at around 748 before you put the options. And the options in this case is the colors as well. The colors 1,400 rand. The one that is here is called carbonized gray. It's also 1,400 rands. And in consideration of what we are facing right now, bakkies being more expensive, Ford has decided to add option packs. There's option pack 1 all the way to option pack 6. This particular one, looking at the stuff that is in here, they actually put option pack 6 on it, which comes at around 50,000 rands. And it adds a lot of stuff like underbody protection. You get 18-inch wheels. In this case, it's all-terrain tires that we have here. You get LED tail lamps, lane keeping aid, auto high beam headlamps, you know, there's collision mitigation, wireless charging, navigation. So there's quite a lot of stuff that you get as well. Even these partial leather seats that we're on right now, they're actually part of that option pack. It doesn't necessarily come like this. And I went to Ford's website to see how much this particular bakkie will cost in the spec level that it is right now, and it comes to just above 800,000 at around 804,000 rands. And looking at everything else that you get, if you want it looking exactly like this, you will have to pay more than 800,000, which is not necessarily bad when I'm considering that now it looks like a Wildtrak, especially from the exterior point of view. As much as there are bits and pieces that will be telling that no, it's not necessarily a Wildtrak, especially when it comes to the grille, and also when you're looking at the handles, the door handles as well, because now they have these hard plastics as well, and the sports bar as well. It will just be a giveaway, unless maybe if there's an option for that I don't necessarily know. But as well, looking at the wheels that they're here, I'm not sure if there's an option to put the ones that are on the Wildtrak as well. But when you come to the interior, you're just going to tell immediately that it's not necessarily the same level. But for that, you will have to pay 100-something thousand rands more, right? And if I was to look at this packaging as it is compared to the Wildtrak, especially if you're going to buy the 2-liter Wildtrak, you're going to be adding the nice to haves, but the performance is going to be the same. The engine is the same, transmission is the same, unless if then you're going to get the 3-liter V6 Wildtrak. That's a different story. 184 kilowatts, I mean, why not? That is a different animal altogether. If you have the money for that, then you can go for that. But if I was to choose between the 2-liter Wildtrak and this, yeah, maybe if I have the money, if I have the 120, I would take the Wildtrak. But in this case, I see this as a better value. When it comes to the performance, I think Ford did some reflection and thought, you know what, if it's not broken, let's not change it. And that's something that I applaud them for, because this 2-liter by table and the 10-speed auto in here are like one of the best marriages that I know, because the connection here, the communication as well, is just super great. The transmission knows when to do what, especially when it's paired to this engine. I've done this in the single table, and I've complained about the change downs where it has to go and fetch the power sometimes, because these things are quite heavy. I mean, these bakkies are quite heavy, and when you consider that now with the bi-table, it's not necessarily feeling like that, especially because this engine is the same one that we've driven on in that Everest spot. And in there, you can feel the heaviness, especially when you try to move it from standstill. This is completely different. You can literally live with this. It's so easy. Once you punch your right foot down, this thing is ready to move. Yes, that leg that you're always going to find, but the extra table is always trying to remove that. It's always trying to reduce that, rather. I mean, being able to get this kind of drivability in a car that weighs almost 2.3 tons and it's as long as, 5.2 meters? I mean, it's not the easiest of things. And one thing I applaud Ford for is the drivability on these things. Not just on open roads like this or not gravel like this, even when you are in town. Actually, the steering wheel, the weight's calibrated as well. Well, Ford, I applaud them for making this thing to feel like a car, regardless of the agriculture sound that you can find in bakkies and trucks and so on. You still get that feeling that, you know what, this thing, I can literally live with it. You do long distances, you don't get home feeling tired and so on because you were in a truck the whole day. I mean, we've done some long distances in this particular car, driving around with my wife, I remember, and when we got home, it was just like any other car, any other day, because it felt so comfortable on the road, especially when it comes to just pushing it, because sometimes you get tired from how heavy the car feels under the right foot. You know, you always trying to push it. This is not giving you that. When you're overtaking, of course, it's going to give you that, you know what, I do have a leg, and forgive me for that, but once I catch on, that's it, I'm gone. And that's something that I experienced with it. It gives you the confidence to overtake. It doesn't necessarily panic midway and starts giving you that grunt that comes, but it's not going anywhere. It's actually going and punching through as you're pushing it. That's something that I like about the bike table. You get to the gravel road like this, you appreciate these all-terrain tires. They grip well, appreciate them, and the comfort as well. I mean, you can literally hear right now as we are piling through this dirt that it's not necessarily panicking. Yes, there's just rocks hitting the undercarriage and so on, which is normal. You can't avoid that anywhere in the world, especially when you're on the gravel road. But the way it's responding right now, the way the screws are tightened, the interior as well, the way it's tightened, actually it feels much more comfortable being in here. I'm just impressed with how Ford has managed to carry that through from the previous one to the current one. Yes, it means that they had to add some price and so on, but if this is how it's going to feel every day, I won't find myself complaining much, because this drives very well. You know, I actually didn't like the idea of XLT, especially when Wildtrak exists. But in this new generation Ford Rangers, I'm actually impressed. I'm quite impressed, and this is quite like nice to have as well. I mean, we are looking at digitalized cluster in front of us as well. It's, as much as it's not as big as the higher variants, it's still very much acceptable. Looking at the screen as well, quite impressive what they've done with the changes, because the previous ones were looking dated. But right now you can see that, you know what, this tablet screen, as much as some people may not like it, I'm okay with it. The change in the steering wheel that they've done, I like it as well. The use of buttons, especially for icon controls and so on, that is important. You can still use the screen to actually shift things around, but it's actually quite, I love that as well. Looking at the interior design as well, in fact, I can't complain much, because around here there's just soft touch, but there are hard plastics down there, which I'm expecting in a bakkie, of course, because if I'm getting a bakkie, I'm not necessarily expecting that I should be in the most plushiest of places. But in this case, I think it's a good compromise, especially at XLT variant. If I get a Wildtrak, I won't expect to feel like this. Any sort of agriculture, I don't want to feel it, because I'm expecting that I can choose between that and any SUV. But in this case, I'm quite impressed with what they've done. Looking at the design, coming to the seats as well, going to the back seats as well, considering that you do have cup holders, looking at the leather seats. One thing for sure is that when it comes to this, if you don't have the load bay cover, it's not necessarily going to be practical for you, because if you're traveling for people in a bakkie like with people in a bakkie like this, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge if you go shopping and then you have to put stuff in here, because this is South Africa, we don't leave stuff in the load bay. So for that, I think you have to consider the aftermarket load bay cover, especially the hard ones that can lock. If Ford can do it, I think then you can just spec it with that, and then you know that you're done with that. You can use this as an SUV. But looking at the package as a whole, exterior, interior, I'm actually impressed. I mean, with the exterior, I've already spoken about how good Ford bakkies look. I mean, currently, I think it's probably one of the best. I think it didn't win that car of the year by mistake because it looks pretty amazing. I mean, when you're looking at it from the front and it's coming, you just see the C-shaped lights. Going to the rear as well, looking at the redesigned lights, now incorporating LEDs, as much as it's an option in this case for LEDs, but you know what? It works so well. Look, if you ever find yourself reviewing or testing a car and you have to look for faults for whatever that car is, I mean, maybe it's a sign that you have a very good car on your hands, because if I can complain about something right now, it's probably just going to be about the manual adjustments on the seats. But is that really necessary for this kind of a bakkie? I'm not worried about that because it still has the necessary adjustments that I need. And as well, when I think about the suspension, it's a little bumpy, especially compared to something like the Everest and so on. But it helps because that means you have a load bay instead of the extra weight that you get in the Everest, because that one is a wagon and there's extra seats and everything else in the back. If you pick it up, let me say when you pick it up, expect to get around 946 kg load pay at the back, 3.5 tons of towing capacity. That didn't change. So when it comes to weight in depth as well, it's still 800 millimeters. So in that case, I think it maintains that as well. And when I'm thinking about everything else after sales, you're looking at a 4-year or 120,000 warranty. And when it comes to service plans, in line with the Competition Commission's guideline for automotive aftermarket sales, Ford has announced that they are going to unbundle their service plans from the price of the vehicle, and that's what they've done. You have an option to actually get service plans up to 8 years or 165,000 kilometers. Even the warranty, you can still extend it to 7 years as well. And from my side, that's all I have for you today. Truly appreciate that you've been here with me throughout. Till next time, I am out.